I'm back, once again, filled with apologies. I'm still looking into the history of a few locations to see if I can find an identity behind a spirit who has been seen multiple times and by many different people. I'm not going to say where it is, as I want to retain some air of mystery about me. But enough of that. Into the stories. We in Wales are incredibly lucky to live in such a stunning part of the UK. From the tropical looking waters of West Wales to the giant peaks of Snowdonia and down to the magical forests that pop up all through this great green land. A land of legend, mystery, song and enduring language. In the words of J.R.R. Tolkien, Welsh is of this soil, this land, the senior language of the men of Britain, and Welsh is beautiful. In this episode, you are going to hear me absolutely butcher the language of my fair land. For that, I wholly apologise. Here are 3 enduring legends that have grown along with the beauty of this fair land, but all have a dark undertone to them. In North Wales, there is a town called Beddgelert, a picturesque village with a beautiful yet tragic tale of love and regret, one that has stood the test of time and pulls on the heartstrings. In the 13th century, Llywelyn the Great, Prince of Gwynedd, who would go on to rule North Wales in later years, enjoyed all the privileges afforded to a young prince. A stately home, a beautiful wife, and all the sports he could wish for: riding, hawking, and most of all, hunting. One day he and his wife, along with various courtiers and staff, left the confines of his stately home for a day of hunting. His young son was left in the capable hands of his wet nurse, as well as being under the watchful gaze of his ever-faithful and best friend, Gelert, a great but gentle wolfhound. Just after midday, the wet nurse finished feeding the baby and had put him down to sleep. As the baby lay in his midday slumber, the nurse made her way to the kitchen to prepare for the evening meal. She had left the door to the nursery open as to hear the baby should he stir. As she chopped the vegetables, keeping an ear out for the baby, a low rumbling sound coursed up her spine, and everything went black. Towards tea time, the party arrived back from the hunt. Llywelyn galloped through the gate along with his wife and dismounted his horse. As he helped his wife down, he turned to see a sight that turned his blood to ice. Gelert, his old friend, came bounding up to greet him, covered in blood. The prince sprinted up the spiral staircase, dog at his heel, to the entrance of the kitchen where he saw the nurse. He then followed the trail, heart pounding, all the way to the nursery, where he saw the open door covered in blood. He let out a wail of anguish before wrenching his sword from its sheath and plunging it into the side of the dog. The hound yelped before falling silent. Tears streamed down Llywelyn's face as he staggered over to the bloody door and pushed it open. There he was met with a scene of blood and carnage, but not the scene he had expected. Inside the crib, a mass of bloody swaddling clothes, and in front of the crib, the bloodied body of a gigantic black wolf. Its throat had been torn out. He stared in despair at the gory mess of blood and baby clothing in the cot and wept. As the tears flowed at the tragic sight, a slight sound came from the crib. he noticed the blood-stained rags move, and then came the unmistakable sound of a baby crying. His wife came barging past him and threw the stained fabric from the crying infant, clutching him and weeping with joy. Llewellyn, however, had realized his mistake. He had killed not only his best friend, but the saviour of his son. Legend has it, Llewellyn never smiled a day after that fateful event. Gelert's grave can still be seen today, and the village of Beth Gelert is named after that grave. After the Romans left our lands, Britain was plunged into what is now known as the Dark Ages. It is known as the Dark Ages due to the lack of written accounts for the period. The Romans dutifully documented their daily lives on scrolls and tablets, so when they left, the Brits had to rebuild civilization from the ground up. As a result, not much is known about the Dark Age period, except for stories passed down through the generations. This is one of those stories. 600 years after the Romans left, Wales had returned to a farming community. Slowly but surely, communities began to expand and towns and cities formed. One of these towns was that of Cantre'r, a small market town on the coast of Wales, surrounded by forests on three sides and the sea on the other. The land was incredibly fertile due to the operation of a sluice gate that controlled the amount of water running through the dike that separated the land from the sea. It operated by allowing the water to be drained from the land at low tide. One cold winter evening, a storm raged in the Irish Sea. A bitter wind raced through the town and all the citizens huddled indoors. Llewellyn slumped against the side of his hut. He was utterly frozen, and the mead was sending a warm sensation down to his belly. But it was now getting to his head. Slowly, his eyes began to shut. In the early hours of the morning, when the rain and wind were at their height, water came flooding over the top of the dike and through the deserted streets. Families woken by the deluge scrambled to get their belongings and head to the nearby forests or to higher ground, but it was too late. The town was lost along with its people. Llewellyn had drunk too much, and he had not opened the sluice gate. There is little in the way of evidence to say that the town was a real place, but there are the odd bits of truth that may support it. At low tides, the remains of a forest have been spotted, and the town is also mentioned in the Black Book of Carmarthen from 1250. Most hauntingly of all, it is said that at certain times of the year you may hear the haunting toll of a bell from the church under the water. In an area of Wales not far from Aberystwyth, Pontfynach, it is known for having a very unusual piece of architecture over a very impressive waterfall. A series of bridges that carry a dark name, Devil's Bridge. The oldest of these three bridges dates back to the 11th century. The second dates to the 18th century, and then the final bridge was built in 1901. But the story of the bridge is very creepy. One night, an old woman heard the sound of her cow in distress. She rose from her bed, wiping the sleep from her eyes, and lit a candle from the glowing embers of the fire. As she looked out her front door, she could not see any sign of the beast. She quickly got dressed, and with her faithful dog next to her, went looking for the cow. She walked for miles, listening to the sound of the distressed heifer as it grew louder. Eventually, she heard the echoing cries coming from the cow. It was on the opposite side of a gorge and completely unsavable. The woman slumped to the floor and wept, for the cow was her only way to survive. As she stood up, she recoiled at the sight of a figure with glowing yellow eyes and cloaked in black. It was stood in front of her and grinning. Her dog whimpered and tried to back away. "What do you want?" she exclaimed. "Why do you cry, my dear?" the figure asked, as the candlelight flickered across his face. "My cow is on the other bank, and I can't get to her to get her back," she stammered. The stranger smiled. "Do not worry, my dear. I shall build you a bridge so that you can save your cow. Return here tomorrow night, and you can claim your animal," he said quietly. You can't build a bridge in one night," she quizzed him. He smiled again. "I can do a great many things. I have been around for a very long time. You shall have your bridge, but on one condition. I claim the first soul to cross that bridge. Do we have an agreement?" The old woman hesitated, but with no other options, she agreed to the terms. The figure in front of her smiled and vanished before her eyes. Clutching her candle, she ran back home with her dog bounding behind her. She pondered the stranger's words and slept badly as haunting images of the figure swirled around her head to the sound of echoing laughter. The next night she got dressed, took some bread for the journey, and followed the sound of the cow's cries once again. After a while, she approached the crevasse where the cow was now stranded, and sure enough, there was a stone bridge leading across the falls. There was no sign of the stranger. As tears trickled down her face, she took a step forward towards the bridge. Then, as quick as a flash, she threw the bread she brought over to the other side of the bridge. Her dog bounded forward to retrieve it, but as he reached the bread, a scream of rage echoed around the clearing. The devil appeared in front of the dog and snarled at the old woman. "You tricked me. I cannot do anything with this animal's soul. I will never return to this land." As she watched, he turned his back and stalked off into the trees. Well, there you have it. 3 legends from Wales. I hope that you've enjoyed them, and please let me know in the comments your thoughts on them. If you have enjoyed them, please hit the like button as it will help promote the channel. And if you would like more of this content, then please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for all notifications. If you wish to contact me, you can find me on Twitter or X or on Facebook. If you wish to get in contact, you can email me at dark_entertainment@outlook.com. And remember, stay dark, stay creepy, and always laugh.